Spain, Brighton, France, Estonia, Myanmar, Illinois, Toronto, India, Bangalore, Lithuania, Montreal, Norway, North Carolina, Portugal, Germany, London, Tasmania, Hungary, Vancouver, England, Ireland. We have Karen, we have Hele, we have Budapest, we have lots of names and lots of people. We have New Mexico, the Netherlands, we have South Africa, etc., etc. Welcome everyone. And we are super happy to have Jarnie Godwin with us. Where are you tuning in from today?
Hi, it's really great to be here with that international flavour. I'm actually in Hampshire, in the south of England, and we've got a beautiful sunny May afternoon. And yeah, I'm really excited. This is my studio. This is where it all happens. So yeah, I'm really excited.
We too, and it's gonna be so fascinating because this is a topic that is new to many of the people who are here today. So we are super thrilled to be focusing on this watercolor online workshop with Jarnie, where she will share how we can transform the beauty of nature into beautiful watercolor pieces using botanical methods. And this is also a way of teaching you not only how she does this in one specific painting, but also why she does what she does, so that you can pick up a beautiful flower that you want to paint and know how to go through this process of creating beautiful artworks. So it's a fascinating love for nature and watercolor in a beautiful combination that we're going to have today. And before we begin, we are super curious because this is new to Artefacto. So we want to know, have you, those of you who are here, have you ever tried botanical painting? So where are you from? Please share where you are. And if you have a looser style, you can write loose. If you love this more detailed, thorough approach, you can write that as well. So I will take a look in the chat in just a moment. We have no from Linda. Chavela writes a little. We have lots of hellos. Rachel writes, yes, I have tried, but no success. Eleni writes, I've tried a little, but I'm not good at it. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. Botanical drawing, a little, yes, not much, and yes. So we have all of these. We have all of this. And you, Jarnie, you are a gold medalist at this, but you also started, we will talk about your journey, but before we start and dive into everything, do you teach both people who have never tried this and people who are pretty advanced at botanical painting, just so we know who this is for?
Oh, absolutely, Hannah. I mean, I started from zero. I didn't even know botanical painting was a thing. I mean, we all see the old sort of collections, and we think, oh, that's lovely. We never think that we can do it ourselves. And beginners particularly may have had a career in the past. They're coming new to it, and they just really, really want to be able to get into it. And I say, absolutely. Anybody could do it. I have taught absolute beginners and I have taught people who are more advanced, who have had some experience, and they just want to take their paintings further. They want to introduce that wow factor that we're all looking for. And I mean, I'm still learning. I think everybody who's in a creative industry, you're always learning. There's always room to pick up something new. And even if some of the people here this afternoon, they do have experience, they have done botanical watercolors in the past, believe me, there is always something new to pick up, even if it's introducing more cast shadows or things like that, just to really give it that extra dynamism, if you like.
Thank you so much for just inviting you into the process a little bit before we dive in even more. And now I want to share some organizational information. This workshop will probably last for around 2 hours. I've talked to Jarnie and she has a lot planned for us. There are moderators in the chat. Please use the chat to share your questions, your insights, and to help each other out. And we will ask some of those questions that pop up along the way during the workshop, and some of them we will save to the Q&A part at the very end. And if this is your first time with us, Please don't feel like you have to keep up with Jarnie. You will get access to the recording for a limited time, so make sure to do this in a way that works for you. If that is that you want to paint along, please go ahead and do so, but no pressure because it's always tricky to keep up with it with someone else when they are painting at their pace. So make this an experience that works for you right now. So now our next question for those of you who are here today live is please pick the one that sounds most like you and drop the answer in the chat. So the first one is A, watercolor panic, feeling that there is too much or too little water in the brush or on the paper. And B is flat, lifeless results, feeling that buds or stems or petals look flat and that there is some three-dimensional aspects lacking. Or C, overworking the painting, adding too much detail and not knowing when to stop. Or D, you can copy, but you cannot create from your own flowers or from your own references. Or E, feeling a sense of fear of making mistakes. Or F, inconsistent color mixing so that every petal ends up with a different shade so that the result looks patchy instead of harmonious. Or G, feeling that you lack a clear learning path, so you're jumping between YouTube tutorials or different inspirations without feeling that sense of progression. And let me take a look in the chat because there are so many letters already here. Deb says A, so water control panic, and C, so overworking the painting. Mignon says B, Dana Jolie also says B, Maxine says D, so copying is easier than creating. A and C, but really all of the above, says Angela. We have some Fs, lots of Bs, lots of E's as well tuning in, so many of them. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. And now let's take a look at what you will take away from today. First and foremost, we have live petal demo where Jarnie will paint in real time through an overhead camera, showing every brush strokes and every single decision, so we get an invitation to her way of painting. And you will discover how to apply water wet on wet to build soft luminous color on botanical subjects, and also see how Jarnie controls water and pigment to get clean edges and delicate detail without that sense of overworking. And also walk away with a clear, repeatable technique that you can use on any flower of your choice or any botanical subject of your choice. We will also be announcing a brand new course for those who want to learn and paint more and have this botanical painting become part of their knowledge, their library, and their possibilities in the watercolor painting experience. And at the end, we also have a live Q&A session for all of those questions that you have gathered or that have popped up, so that we get as much out of this experience as we possibly can. Jarnie is a gold medalist. She started as self-taught, and that is not a contradiction. That is something that we will learn can be a key. We will see how that unfolds. She's also a published author of vibrant botanical paintings. One of her artworks that she has sent in to the Hunt Institute of Botanical Documentation has become permanent in their collection of artworks. She has exhibited and she has taught and she has so much experience under her belt. So this is a very good place to be if you want to learn botanical paintings with a gold medalist who knows what it's like to start from zero and going all the way to where she is today. So, Jarnie, you come from a background of architecture, graphic design, teaching geography instead of art school. So, how do you think that this background shaped the way that you paint and that you teach painting? And what do you do differently because of this background?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely, Hannah. I mean, as I say, when I was young, I didn't go to art school. I went straight to work and I did lots and lots and lots of different jobs as was the way back then. And I mean, I love structure. I mean, architecture helps with that. You know, you do technical drawing, and so y my way of working was never going to be big, broad landscapes. I was always going to do something that required patience, measurement, structure, And that's kind of what brought me to botanical painting and, of course, graphic design. You're always looking for something a little bit different, a little bit quirky, something that's got a bit of a wow factor, if you like. So I do tend to paint things that are very vibrant, that are larger than life. I mean, some of your viewers this afternoon can probably see that because we are in my studio, my latest piece of work is behind me, and it's a big iris, and there's lots of sort of light, lots of shadow. I really like to introduce dynamism into my work, and my method of teaching is very relaxed because lots of people will have been coming from other backgrounds, other jobs, other careers, or just picking it up for a hobby. And you don't want to feel that you can't do it. It is difficult, but it's more to do with how you approach it. It forces you to slow down. You really can't rush the process. You're looking for details. So your levels of observation become much more acute. You start to tune in to the subject. And I always like to think of my subjects as a portrait painter might look at a sitter. You're trying to capture its soul. You're trying to capture its presence and a moment in time. And it takes time to do that. And I think having that time to yourself is that way of also tuning into sort of part of yourself. And I really enjoy that part of teaching where you're not just telling somebody how to do something, you're also introducing the method as to why you're applying the paint in a certain way. And they're also watching them sort of find their own way through and start to develop as an artist. I really encourage that.
Thank you so much for sharing. And we have a quote here that I also want to share while we're on the theme. And that is, I really want my paintings to engage and to enliven a conversation, a memory, an exploration. I see my botanical subjects almost as a portrait painter sees a person. I look for the unique personality which excites, intrigues, and informs my painting. So if anyone has ever felt this way about nature, about flowers, about beautiful leaves, then this is going to be part of that process while painting botanical paintings. So that's beautiful. And we do have some examples here. And we have another question for you, Jarnie. At what point in your journey did you stop seeing yourself as someone who painted for a hobby and realize that, wow, I am an artist? How did that happen?
I don't, I mean, it's really difficult to answer that one. I think everyone's looking, when you get to a certain point in painting, you start to think, oh, I could possibly put this in for an exhibition. Now that might just be your local art group, or it might be something a little bit more advanced. And you start to see that other people do that as well. And when you, although I don't encourage comparison, when you start to see that your work is perhaps of a level that is being accepted into exhibition, you think, do you know, I think I might give it a go. And I think the first one that you showed, the water lily, just a moment ago on the previous slide, and that one is the one that's actually in Pittsburgh at the Hunt. And that one was a real challenge, but I was determined that I was going to do it. And it was a real shift in my paintings, actually, how I presented things, because before then I was doing very delicate watercolors, very precise, very traditional, so actual size with lots of content. And then I wanted to do something that was really different, big, solid, structural. And the water lily was kind of the shift. And when it got accepted, I think it was that validation, because it's a difficult exhibition to get into. Once you've made it, you think, I can't waste that opportunity, because some people will submit over and over and over again, and they won't get in, they won't get accepted. So when I did, I thought, I'm not going to sort of dismiss those people by not carrying on. So I'm sort of carrying on that legacy of thinking, no, I do have to keep going. For all of us self-taught artists who may try and try and try and don't quite make it, and the luck that I had, I think, no, I want to share that. And I want to emphasize that if I can do it, then anybody can. You just need that sort of time and practice, and also that that sort of inside you, you want to do it. So yeah, once you get that validation, you don't stop really.
Wonderful. And we're gonna see one more example here before we dive in to the next slide, which has another question for you, Jarnie, which is watercolor mistakes are one of the biggest things that stop people from even starting or for daring to take on what they really would love to be able to take on or to paint. And what do you see the most often, both in your own work and in your student, when it comes to these kinds of watercolor mistakes that makes us freeze instead of moving on?
Oh gosh, yes, watercolor mistakes. I mean, I talk about that all the time, and any of the viewers here this afternoon who follow me online will know I go on about mistakes all the time. I think it was John Singer Sargent who said that watercolor is basically making the best of an emergency, and I think he's absolutely right. It's so spontaneous, it has a mind of its own, and I think the thing with mistakes is not to fear them. They happen to everybody all of the time. I mean, the water lily had one of the biggest mistakes I made. And of course, I just carried on. I worked through it. I found out a solution. And rather than, tearing up the painting, crying, getting upset, starting again, I thought, no, I'm going to do something to fix this. And I think mistakes are probably one of the things that I'm not going to say I enjoy them because nobody wants to make an error, but when they happen, I think the thing is not to fear them, but to have an approach that it's almost like having a toolbox of things you know to do that is going to bring that painting back to you. And even if it's something, oh, sorry, I'll just get rid of that, and something that is always sort of in the background is don't fear it, work with it, because if you can save it and you think, yeah, that's actually got a mistake in it, nobody's going to know unless you tell them. So you kind of work with it. And there's also a phrase that I use that my dad uses constantly, which is an old proverb which says, if you have to make a mistake, make a feature of it. That covers everything.
Thank you so much for sharing this before we start painting. And we will start painting in a couple of minutes. Let me just first ask if you have already painted with Jarnie. If that's the case, please write me in the chat. And if you are new to painting with her, please write new in the chat so we can welcome you back and welcome you for the first time. And while you do that, I want to share that this is our chance for everyone who wants to learn to paint botanicals with more confidence, understand why you choose to do things a certain way, and finally create flowers that look alive on paper and that come to life. And this workshop is perfect if you've been following tutorials, but you feel that it's very difficult to work in the same flow with the same ease when you're painting on your own. And if your paintings look flat and you can't figure out why, or if you panic when the watercolor touches the paper because it's so difficult to know how much water and paint to use, or if you've never tried botanical paintings but you want to paint flowers because it's so beautiful, or if you want to understand why things work and how you can choose different aspects to create beautiful paintings. And also, if you are already a watercolorist but you feel that botanical subjects is like a completely different world and you're intrigued to learn more, then you are in the right place. And what is so exciting is that this is the first botanical workshop leading up to the first botanical painting course that Artefacto has ever had. So we're super thrilled and grateful to Jarnie for creating this for and with us so that we get a chance to enjoy this. And let me take a look in the chat. We have lots of new people. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, so many new people. Welcome to all of you. Wonderful. We have several comments about how beautiful your artworks are, Jarnie. I just wanted
Really kind.
to
Thank
share
you.
that. Wonderful. Welcome, everyone. And what is so special about Jarnie's approach is that she teaches the why. She takes things slowly, so you don't have to figure things out on your own. You will learn the why from her so that you can use that and know how to solve mistakes and how to move through the process and feeling that precision is rooted in structure and not guesswork. Because of her background, she can share that and break it down for everyone. And this is built for independent painters, not for those who just want to paint along, but for those who want to learn the mythology behind it so that you are empowered to paint the beautiful natural subjects of your choice. So the goal here is to understand the principle well enough to pick up any flower that you want to paint and be able to paint this on your own. That is where Jarnie's heart lies, which we are so grateful for. And if you're ready to paint and gain more insights from Jarnie, write yes in the chat, because it's time for the first out of 2 practice parts where Jarnie will share her process with all of us.
Okay, so I'm just going to start sharing my screen. You can pick it up. Just take a couple of moments and you should be able to see what I've got here. This is the exact setup that I use when I am doing my on-screen demonstrations, and actually all of the courses that you're going to get are filmed in this way. So you can see straight away, here is the sweet pea. This is the finished painting. This is the original. And this one, I would say probably if you're a little bit more experienced, you've had a little bit of a try, this is the one for you. Although if you are a beginner, you could possibly take out that one and just have a go at this little one on the stem. So it's flexible. You can just pick and choose the way you want to do it. And then here's the little clematis. This one grows in my garden. In fact, they all grow in my garden. And this is a lovely little single one. And again, if you're very, very new, you could have a go at maybe just one petal and maybe a little bit of the center, because then on this one, you're sort of picking through all these little bits. And really, you just start with one very, very pale wash and everything else is made darker. I know that I've made that sound terribly simplistic, but that's kind of what you're doing. It's a little bit like just sort of picking out the little bits that you can see that are darker. And then there's the cosmos. This one's always a favorite. And again, you know, if you're a beginner, you could just maybe pick out one of the petals to have a try. If you're more advanced, then that's great. You can have a go at the whole thing. It's quite a big one because it is larger than life. But again, you know, it's got all that sort of dynamism, those highlights, dark shadows, lots of different pinks in there. It's beautiful. Now, this isn't the iris you get in the course. That one actually went to a lovely new home. But it's very, very similar. And you can see again that we've got lots and lots of detail. But actually, the irises are great for beginners because you get to have a practice of that rounded form. You get lots of little details, lots of little highlights in different colors. And it's a really nice one as well to have a go at. And I mean, nobody's going to know if you make mistakes. Nobody's going to know if you mess it up. You can, that's the beauty of it. You could just keep on trying and have a go. So whenever I start an iris, first thing you do, and of course you get this with the courses as well, is a color chart, because you kind of want to know where you're going. I mean, I tend not to make loads and loads of color charts for the work I do now, but when you're beginning and when you just want to have a look at where you need to be, you sort of want to make sure that you know exactly what color families that you want. Up here, you can see you've got cooler purples and violets. Down here, you've got warmer ones, and then the yellows and the greys and the natural colors. Note that I don't use any neutral tint or greys or greens on my palette. All of those are mixed just using these colors. So the greens are obviously yellow and blue, and then I just add a little touch of red to knock the edge off. And those create these beautiful greens that you can see here. And then you've got the greys, the neutral tints, and they're mixed again using 3 primaries, and then you just adjust with more red, more blue, or more yellow in order to get the color that you want. So this afternoon, we've got the iris on paper, and you can see that it's already very, very well detailed. And this is important because you want to know where everything's going to get mapped out. These lines will get erased off as you go, but you need them to start with because you need that good drawing. With botanical painting, you're trying to reproduce something that's a natural subject in front of you. So you want to make sure it's accurate because a bad drawing, you'll never get a bad result, you'll never get a good result. So it's always good to have a good drawing at the start. That's why, as well, with the course, you've got a pre-prepared drawing so that you don't have to worry about that. As your experience with painting and drawing increases, then you'll start to be able to do it for yourself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on this little petal here, and you can see there's already a little bit done here. So this is sort of curving around this petal. And then you've got this one here. So I always start with the lightest colour first. So that's going to be the yellow, which is at the base, because as this bud opens, that yellow is on the back of the flower. So I'm just getting some yellow mixed. You can use a bigger brush as well, so don't have to use your nice small ones. So I'm just going to get that nice and watery. You'll find that as you start a painting, you want to also make sure that you check how yellow that is and how correct it is before you apply it to the paper. So first washes tend to be quite loose, they tend to be quite watery. And as you increase and get into the finer details, you tend to use smaller brushes, drier paint, and that's kind of how we go. I'm leaving a lot of the pencil on here so that you can actually see what I'm doing. I would normally rub this off because the other thing you can find with this is that graphite can be locked in by paint. And it doesn't matter how much you rub, you will never get rid of those lines. So always make sure you get rid of the pencil before you start painting. But I'm going to go ahead with it because you need to see where I'm going and what I'm doing. So I'm using the bigger brush. And I want this yellow all over the base. It's like the foundation. And immediately that's not too terrifying, is it? Because you think, oh, botanical painting must be really, really, really difficult and really fine. To begin with, it's not actually. You can have quite big brush strokes, quite loose paint, and get a really good result. So it needs to be a little more green towards the base. So I'm just going to drag a little bit across. Barely any blue gone in there. Lots of yellow still. Oh, that's the wrong one. Yep, checking that. While this is wet, I can work the paint and just drop in some more. So that's wet into wet. And I'm just going to change to a smaller brush. This is clean water in the round pot. You want 2 pots when you're painting with botanical because you often want a little bit of water if you're putting a clean glaze on to work wet into wet. But what I've done is I've used the paint itself. So I need a little more green. Always work with the contour of the subject. So I'm working in a downward action. Now you can see where I've put the paint higher up, that's starting to dry and create lines. So that's starting to tell me that this bit of the wash is starting to dry. It's nearing its end of being able to be worked. Because if I carry on, it will start to sort of spoil it a little bit. So I'm just going to put a little bit of this green over here.
I have a couple of comments from the chat that I wanted to share, and one of them is that
Hannah.
First and foremost, your mouse is visible on close to the palette. Is it possible to move that to the side a little bit on the screen, since you're screen sharing the mouse from the computer?
I don't actually have a mouse.
The clicky thing.
Oh, this, so it's telling her, or that.
No,
I can't actually see that on my screen. I'm not sure how
little,
far out it goes. That's for the monitor. Can you see it now?
Yeah, it's the little arrow that you used to click on the screen.
Oh, I see. Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah,
Let's
and
get rid of that.
it's whirling, so so it's
Oh,
distracting
no.
one of
Oh,
us.
that's terrible.
And we
Sorry
have a
about that,
question.
everybody. See, this is what I
Thank you.
mean about it just as it happens. These things happen. So yeah, we work with it.
Absolutely.
It's fine.
We had a question from Teresia. I don't entirely understand this, but let's see if we can figure it out together. She writes, a bad drawing is not a good result. Can't you draw with a brush later? Most of the time my drawing disappear.
Okay, so when with botanical painting, you tend to want a fairly full drawing, especially if you're a beginner. You want a fairly full drawing to start with, so that you can see where the tonal shifts are, where the details are. I understand what you say about the when you put a wash on, that you start to lose the detail. But what you can do is I can see that obviously I'm going to need a grey. So if I just demonstrate that to you, what you do is you can draw with your brush as you say. So I will often do that as well. So I'm just going to mix a very, very light, sort of almost like a grey colour. It's a bit green, but if you add some red, that will shift it over. Okay, so that's a little bit of a grey. Okay, so I know that there's going to be detail on here. So as you can see where the first layer's gone on, those lines are starting to disappear under the wash. So if you sort of use a very, very fine brush and you know that those details are going to be needed later, so you can actually start to sort of draw them very, very lightly over the pencil and draw them in to sort of map where you know they're going to want to be, and you can start to sort of put them back. Now you might need to do that a few times, so once you've got them in once, you'll probably have to go back and go over them again as your washes get darker. But most of them will stay because wherever your light um, tones are, you're going to want only one or two layers of paint. So you don't want your details to be too dark too soon. But yeah, I can certainly understand, thinking, okay, can I draw with a brush? Your initial drawing should be in pencil because if you make a mistake, you can rub it out. Whereas if you make a mistake with paint, you can't go back. I'm also very I encourage, especially beginners, to use tracing paper when they transfer their drawing. Because if you get an accurate drawing on tracing paper, if you do make a mistake, you can then go back and start again with a fresh drawing because you've already got one sort of in reserve, if you like. So yeah, absolutely. You can draw with paint very carefully onto your painting once you start it, but I wouldn't do an outline in paint because you want that accuracy. I mean, once you've rubbed it out, you can go over lightly, but make sure it's also the colour that you're going to need. So, right, we've got this fairly dry now, I would say. So again, I'm going to use my bigger brush. Now, this is sort of the violet colour I used for this little bit up here. So I'm going to use this again, but I'm going to adjust it a little bit. I think also with botanical painting, it's that invitation to slow down. This is not a fast process. Don't ever think that you've got to rush. There shouldn't be any need for panic. There shouldn't be any sort of rush to think, oh, that's gone wrong. I must quickly do this. No, because if you quickly do something, it's very easy to then make a mistake, not be able to rescue something. Take your time, get that color just right, get that line nice and precise. So again, quite watery. And I'm going to go in over here. I want to get this line nice and clean. So that's slightly against the contour, but then you can go in and just sort of drag that paint out so that you don't get that tide line, which I know some people get really nervous about. Can happen. Happens to us all. You know, don't ever think that just because, you know, you've got some experience that tide marks don't happen. Oh, really? Trust me, they do. So I'm just pulling this out to start getting some texture and some tonal variation. So I'm just using the paint I've got on the paper just to sort of start to curve that round. If there's white paper left, that's fine. I'm not going to go in and try and capture it all because it might actually cause more problems than I can actually deal with. So I'm just going to come round. And again, you want to go careful. Edges are important. You're creating the illusion of something that's real. So if you've got sort of a smudgy edge, even at this early stage, it's very, very difficult, as I say, to sort of bring it back again. So edges you want to be really careful on. So starting to bring these two colours together, I didn't want to put them wet into wet. So wet the whole petal and then drop the purple in there and drop the yellow down there. Because here is a kind of a, it's not exactly white, but it's very, very pale. And where those two would mix would probably not create on their own the right colour. But just to see how they do react together, we can mix them together. They would create a kind of an orange, a muddy orange. That's not what we want. We want a sort of a soft, sort of blue toned grey. So I'm just going to grab a bit. Actually, everything's very, very pale at this stage, very careful, very gentle. So you test it, even if it's just a little bit, because you want to make sure it's right. Now, because we want to start creating that sort of curved edge, I'm going to start and bring that together. I'm making it darker this side because obviously it tilts that way. The shadow side is on this side, so all the shadow sides are going to be on this side. And we want that nicely rounded shape. So I'm just bringing that down a little bit and then just curving it through there. And if you think, oh, that looks a little bit fat, it's a little out of shape, you can just use a clean, just damp brush. You take most of the water off it and just gently ease that paint where you want it. And again, no panic, no, oh, suddenly that's gone wrong, no rush. It's all, keep it at your pace, keep it under control. It doesn't matter if it goes a little bit awry, just work with it. I just bring a little bit of this colour in here. Start to build it up. I think what's lovely about this genre is because you spend time with a real subject, you can really start to tune in to its character. You know, you want your painting to have character. You want it to have that lovely feeling of a moment in time. And botanical painting is all about the moment in time. Originally, it was for identification. back in the day before photography and ships would be sailing the world looking for new species, they would take an artist with them who would paint all the subjects they found, and they would be brought back, and they press them as well, press the plants, and those would all be brought back to wherever in the world they were, and those collections are still around today. Kew Gardens here in Britain has just added their 100,000th herbarium subject to their collection, which I think is extraordinary. So just starting to pick through some of these little bits. I haven't done this bit yet because there's a big shadow there, and I don't want to go in there too quickly. Again, keeping it quite watery. Just going to start.
We do have a question regarding what colors you are using. So if
Oh
it's
yeah.
possible for the next few parts that you just share what colors you are mixing. I know that the participants would highly appreciate it so they can follow along in the color mixing in your
Yeah, I
process.
mean, every tutorial that you get the color chart, and it actually tells you exactly what I've got on the palette. So in the corner here is dioxazine purple, which is a really, really strong purple. I've actually got it marked there, diox P. So if you take any color that you've got and you do it sort of, you take it from its extreme. If I just take that one, this one can be quite granulating, but it's a really, really nice. So that's how dark it can go. And then when you take it literally to nothing, it's really lovely. Um, and then we've got that one is quinacridone purple, quinacridone magenta. Then we've got permanent magenta, quinacridone rose. That's quinacridone pink. That was quinacridone rose. That red we're not using. That one is anthraquinone red. That one, again, we're not using. That one's Perylene Maroon, Quinacridone Gold, Hansa Yellow Deep. That one is Azo Yellow, Lemon Yellow, Transparent Yellow. That one always looks hideous on the palette, but is really lovely to use. This one is Cerulean. Then we've got Windsor Blue. Then we've got Indanthrene Blue down to Permanent Violet. And no, that was Indanthrene Blue. I've had a little bit of a change around. So yeah. So also I generally, when I set out a palette, I always start with transparent yellow, and I'll go from cool yellows to warm yellows to oranges through warm reds down to cool reds and pinks, and then across to the purples, finishing with cool blues and then up to cerulean. So it's kind of like a clock. It's always like a clock. So you know where everything is. And I mean, you just, leave off the ones that you don't want to use. These reds are way too warm for what we've got. I mean, that's a scarlet. So there's no way we're going to be using that this afternoon because it's just so the right. I mean, you can see kind of the temperatures of the colours that we've got here, and that is way too hot. So, excuse me, you can see that you start to get your eye into what you're using and you start to see what the temperatures are. So you might want cool and warm in one painting. Excuse me. But you start to note what colours you're not going to need against which ones you definitely do. So hopefully that helps. But I mean, because when you are painting, the subject that you have in front of you might not be exactly the same as the one you painted before. So even with the iris I've got behind me, the one I'm painting with you is exactly the same. It's just that it's in different light, it's at a different stage of its development. And so its color family may be slightly different. They might be slightly cooler, slightly warmer. And you'll find that even within one subject where you might be painting several of them or, through the year, that you might not use exactly the same colors. But with this one this afternoon, I mean, you'll find that, you'll go back to the same colors, like a bit of magenta, a bit of the violet, a bit of the purple, and you'll just use different quantities of each one. I mean, you can never say exactly how much of any one color you want. You just have to test all the time before you put the paint on. So all the time you're looking to see, well, do I need a bit more of this? Do I need a bit more of that? It's never an exact science. So you can't say exactly what you're putting on. You're just feeling your way. It's an organic way of painting. I mean, you've got the chart, but you can't know exactly how much of everything's gone in. You've got to try and sort of put things together. But also, I mean, you might be using a different brand. So brands vary really widely as to what level of pigmentation they might have. So when you get your colors, you just try with them and get to know your palette. Get to know the limitations of a color, or what you can do with it. So let's just put in a bit of. So when you start to get to a point, so this is almost like a second layer here, you can start to go darker in places where you know it's got to, because we're never going to leave it that light. But you're not going to cover all of what you did before. So you want some of the wash that you put on first to sort of show through and stay put. So you don't cover everything. You're just sort of enhancing it by making some things darker.
I don't know if this is possible, but we have some questions if it would be possible to zoom in or lower the camera so that we see the details better.
Oh, well, I mean, the reason why I've done it here is so that you can actually see the method as well. I can certainly see if I can zoom it in a bit.
I don't know if that's easy, then that would be great because the painting part now when it's live streamed it's not as high quality as when it's pre-record when it's a recorded video. So I
That
think
might
this
help a
is
little bit.
this is
Let's get
better. Thank you
that's
so much
closer.
for that.
So again,
Beautiful.
it's preference. Some people really like to see the palette, and some like to see the detail. I mean, demonstrating is always sort of a bit of a dark art. So you're never really entirely sure how much everybody wants to see. But there we go. So you can start to see exactly what that comment said earlier about drawing as you go, especially when something has got a lot of detailed lines and a lot of texture on it. Yeah, you can certainly keep that going while you're painting, because you certainly don't want to lose it. I'm using very, very light brush strokes. I mean, this is a very warm violet, so there's lots of quinacridone violet in there. So you can see. If those lines look a little sharp, you can just soften them with the brush again, just to sort of bring it round. And you can already start to see the way it's kind of starting to come together. Now note as well that all the colours stay on. Now I want a little bit of this perylene around. I'm going to pop it into this colour here, into the grey. Because some of these little details down the side, these little, I call them tiger stripes, we mapped them in earlier, so we can pop them in again now in the colour that I'm going to want for them. And that's just wet on dry. So just bringing them out. reshaping them a little bit as I go. And then they kind of change to the grey colour. So you're always going to want all of your colours on the palette kind of all at the same time. You don't want to sort of rub a bit off or lose them. You definitely want to keep them there. So you can see with this little petal, even like in the few minutes that we've been, talking about it, working on it, it's already starting to sort of take on the shape that we want, that sort of rounded, nice, realistic look that we want. And there's a bit of a shadow in here, so I'm going to start working that up. And of course, you get to a point, I know some of you were asking right at the beginning, when Hannah was talking through the presentation, about when to stop. And the thing about sort of early washes is you can work it all the time it's wet, you can keep on going, you can keep on working. But once it gets to a point where it's starting to dry, you've got to leave it alone. But also you don't want to make things too dark too soon. If you go straight in with a heavy wash, if you're not entirely sure what to do next, you can lose it altogether. So less is more, I would always advise if you're new, because you can always go back and add more later. Whereas if you go in too sort of heavy-handed right at the start because you're impatient, it can all go horribly badly and you lose all that lovely colour and shape and work that you did early on. So now that everything else has gone darker, the yellow needs to be made darker. And of course, as the same colour is sort of drying on the palette, it becomes more concentrated. So it's not like you've even got to sort of recreate another colour. You can use exactly the same colour, but because it's sort of concentrated itself on the palette, you don't add as much water to it, and it gives you the depth that you want. So you start to have a darker colour without even having to mix one. So that's starting to come together quite nicely. And whenever you put in veins, they've always got somewhere to go. They've got to join up. If you put lines in and they've got no sort of destination, if you like, they're going nowhere, you suddenly think, oh, well, that doesn't look natural. It doesn't look right. So lines always have to have, continuity. There's so many sort of lovely bouquets of flowers that I've seen painted, and you suddenly look at the stems and one sticks out and you think, well, where's the rest of that stem gone? Now that's the drawing that didn't quite come together. So you do have to sort of pay attention to where your lines go. So all of these veins have all got somewhere to go. So put them in again. There's a lot of repetition in botanical painting. You'll find that you're just putting lots and lots of layers on lots and lots of times. And you think, oh, hang on a minute, I've already done that bit. But you think, no, because I'm making it darker. And if you notice, while I've been working, it's the colours on the palette are drying and I'm not adding as much water as I did at the start. So where those big washes were loose and watery and they were quite spontaneous, now that they're getting to a point where they're sort of a bit drier, they're a little bit more concentrated, they're definitely sort of working to pull in the sort of the detail that we want. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit of the Hansa yellow. You could also use Indian yellow for that sort of a colour. So it's just giving a little kink, a little dent. Lots of adjustment all the time. So a little bit of grey just going in, just to sort of bring that dent a little bit. So a little bit of a sort of a scrubbing motion like that sort of starts to give a little bit of texture, because the dry brush will start to sort of separate. And if there's too much on the brush, you just take it off with a bit of tissue. So a little bit of scrubbing motion. If I do it with a bit of colour that you can see a bit more clearly, and then pop it on here. If you've got a drier brush, the point starts to sort of splay out. So you can see that your texture is created. And you can sort of get that lovely, I call it a halo of colour. You can start to get a sort of a lovely, gentle application. So where there's texture, you can create a lovely halo. So we actually want a little bit of that up here, just to sort of break up where this colour meets into this sort of grey. It's a bit broken. There's always lots of different techniques you can do. I mean, you try to apply that sort of scrubby, broken texture yourself with a brush, you'll never be able to do it. But by understanding that the brush will do it simply because it's dry, you know, you've got that extra technique that you can rely on, and you just sort of apply it randomly and it does it, you know, it does it for you. This has got to go darker anyway, but it's just a nice introduction of that sort of technique. I use it a lot, that technique, where I want broken texture or pattern. So this colour is more concentrated now. So just going to put that where I want anything to be darker. It's usually where the folded edges are, because where the folded edges are, they're sort of going out of sight. Again, just use the clean, just damp brush, repeating that process again, just to drag out and soften. And I mean, you know, you can, as I say, you might want to repeat the process a few times to really build up the colour. And it will just get darker and darker and darker. Always working with the contour of the subject. And you notice that these colours haven't really altered much. It's just a little bit more of the violet, a little bit more of the blue, maybe a touch more of a yellow, maybe I mean the Hansa Yellow Deep is my warm yellow, and the other two, they're my cool yellows. And you know, it's just those few colours that I've used this afternoon are already starting to bring this this little study together. So it's not really a, a sort of a thing where you need lots and lots and lots of things. You can start relatively small, relatively easily, if you like, because you don't have to invest in a lot of things. You can get started quite quickly with not a lot. I always try to work with a relatively limited palette on your um, worksheets when you get the course. There'll be a full worksheet that's got all of the kit list, all of the color chart, and it will list just the colors you need for just that project. So I'm not saying to you, right, you've got to get the whole palette. It's just the ones you need for that particular project. So if you only want to have a go at one or two, you'll generally use the same colors again and again, but there won't be a lot of them. So you'll find that actually you can get started with not too many colours and still get a really good result. You know, there's no need for a lot if a few will do the job. So yeah, you'll find that there's just the ones you need for just that project, and that will be enough to get you started, get you going.
Thank you so much for sharing everything that you've shared so far. Now we have so many questions about the materials that I cannot wait. We had
Shall
planned to
we
take that.
shall we
uh,
shall we move on then, Hannah?
I,
And
I
I'll leave that one alone and then we'll carry on in a bit. Shall we do that?
I think that's a great idea. And when before we start sharing more information about the course, I would love to hear just what paper are you using and why, and what brushes are you using and why?
Absolutely, no problem. So I'll keep it on I'll keep it on the video page
Yeah.
here. So these are, I mean, you can, this one is a Winsor and Newton. It's a series 7 and it's a miniature brush. So these are the sable ones from Winsor and Newton. The series 7, they are quite expensive, but what you find is you don't, I mean, I don't need that, I don't use that many. I mean, this one is a De La Roni Diana. I've had this one for years. This one's a size 3, and this one I use for big washes. I mean, if you look after um, natural fiber brushes, you'll find that they will last for years. Now, I know they are going slightly out of favor with some people. They don't want to use natural fiber. There are still some really, really good synthetic fiber brushes out there. Winsor and Newton do very, very good ones. So this one is a size 1. I've also got a size 2. And I've also got this teeny tiny one, which is actually another one of my really old ones. This is a 00 by Da Vinci, and it's their Maestro. Now that one I use for very, very, very fine detail work. But again, these are years old. Now this one is perhaps the most important brush I have. Let's just give it a moment in the sun. This one is, I mean, you can see how much I've used it. The name's actually worn off, but this is a Winsor and Newton, and it is their Series 56. It's a very, very small sort of wedge flat flat brush. Now this one is what I call my eraser brush. So when you want to get rid of a problem, clean water always, you get rid of the excess and you can actually sort of erase. You have to scrub quite hard, but you can actually start to get rid of a dodgy edge or something that you don't want. You can actually pick out a little bit on the subject if you're all still watching. So if I say, okay, I want a bit more of a highlight in there, I can just scrub a bit out. Then you can use a bit of tissue and it lifts it. There's a tiny little stain on there, barely visible, but that's all you need sometimes, especially with botanicals. So the eraser brush is the one. And I mean that's just 3 or 4. You don't need every single brush. And the paper I use is Arches. I have used loads of other ones, but I do actually really, really like this one. And of course, it's hot press paper, which is a must for botanical painting because you want as flat a surface as possible so that when you paint in those edges, you're not sort of getting that bumpy, loose edge as you would do if you were using a different sort of watercolor paper. So it's really, really important to use that kind of paper. And this is a ceramic palette. Ceramic's best because if you use plastic, it can sometimes be deceptive as to what color you're mixing. They stain easily, and also they can be very, very rough on your brushes. Just a plate from the kitchen is good because this one, these are actually little serving plates. They're for food. A very dear friend of mine in America bought me those from a homeware store. So you can get things relatively cheaply, but I would say the place to spend your money if you're going to spend is good paper, good brushes, and good paint. So those three things. That's why I try to keep the palette limited when for the course, because then you don't have to buy everything really expensively. It can all be done very, very cheaply. Okay. Any more questions on this? Because otherwise I'll stop the share so that
Yeah, you can
Hannah
stop the
can
share,
carry
and
on.
I have saved lots of questions, but we do have the Q&A session as well, so we will
Excellent.
have time for
Yes.
that. And
I
now,
always get carried away with my painting.
now that we have a bit of a break, is this usually around the time where you would let the paint dry completely before you move on?
Absolutely. I mean, I've done quite a bit on that one bit. I mean, most of that because it's a warm day, it's dried really quickly, and that's something else for everybody to sort of take on board. That depending on where you are in the world, and I know there are some people, some very, very hot climates, that your paint will dry much more quickly than, say, for me up here in the UK. So get to know how quickly your washes dry. So yes, I would normally take a break about now because it would give an opportunity to readjust what you've done, to look at what you've done, and also just to get away from it.
Yeah.
I think, especially with beginners, they think, "Oh, I've got this. I'm going to paint the whole time." No, walk away from it because otherwise you'll go mad.
That is such a good idea. And now we're gonna let this rest both dry and also rest our minds a little bit. And in a few minutes, we will continue this practice part and paint for as long as we have time. And here are some things that separates painters who copy from painters who create. First and foremost, it's about understanding the why. Understanding why watercolor behaves the way it does so that you can paint independently and use it and go with the flow instead of having to go with someone else's flow. And then also, the second one is to use light and shadow and the white paper instead of white paint to create that sense of highlights and shadows and three-dimensional aspects. And then the third one is learning when to stop, both when you need to stop for a drying time and also when to stop completely. And the skill isn't always to add more, it can be to know when your painting is done and leaving it at that, which is something we will take a closer look at in the second practice part. And if you're ready to understand why watercolor behaves the way it does and paint with that knowledge and not against it, you are more than welcome to join the brand new course, A Botanical Summer Painting Realistic Flowers in Watercolor with Jarnie, where she shares the insights that has taken her to becoming a gold medalist of botanical painting. So this can take you to a whole new level in this field. And this course is created for those who already paint watercolors but feel that the flowers look flat or that you don't know how to create botanical flowers specifically. And if you love botanical subjects and you want a structured path so that you know that you learn from the best in a step-by-step structure. And if you watch tutorials but you still don't really know how to be able to pick your own flowers and paint what you want to paint from the beautiful world around us. So here is the course program. So the different parts. You start here with Iris Germanica Bud. What have you, um, what are the insights we learned from this one, and why have you chosen this as the first lesson, the first part, the first gateway into botanical painting, Jarnie?
I think first of all because irises are my personal favorite. I mean, I've picked an iris for this afternoon, so and I've got an iris behind me. I mean, I just adore them. But also what I think is good about this one is you get a lot of practice in one subject. It's kind of like a shard, if you like. It's a very, very structured shape. It's all rounded. I mean, if you imagine, it could have been a chili pepper because they have exactly the same kind of shape and structure. But what I wanted was a lot of texture, a lot of different surface patterns, and of course a stem. So even if, as a beginner, you just wanted to do one thing to have a go at, this one has got all of it all in one go. So you're doing things that are rounded, you're doing things that are papery, you've got a lot of color transitions, and there's a bit of texture in the folds and the little creases, and you've also got the surface patterns. So this one, I think, particularly for beginners, introduces them to all the techniques that they're actually going to need in order to move on.
Thank you for that. And then you move on to a painting that I think is so beautiful. You can feel the texture, you can sense that soft, alive texture of these petals. You sense the like the pigments make it feel so real, and the techniques that you've chosen make it feel like the flower is there in reality. But of course, it is a watercolor. So, what do you learn in and what do you teach in this course, Clematis Arabella?
Well, this one, I mean, straight away you can see that it's going in on itself. It's cup shaped. It's really that center is really tight. And one of the other things that you find with a lot of even experienced botanical painters is that the fear of going very, very dark. I mean, the center stamens are sort of enclosed in this almost near black shadow. And a lot of painters are really nervous of creating blacks and neutrals using just primaries. So a lot of artists get that experience in this one. It's going for that really dark depth, which if it wasn't in there, that wouldn't have the same level of dimension, if you like. It wouldn't have that 3D. You've got to mix those really dark black colors in order to get that shape. Um, and of course, because right above that, right next to that dark, are those almost white, beautifully yellow little cluster of stamens, and it's keeping those colors away from each other, keeping them separate. How do you stop darks mixing in with near whites? And you know, again, it's there's a lot of content in this one little subject, which again can then be moved on to something more advanced. So in the first one, it's all about picking up the basics and knowing how to apply them to get shape. And in this one, it's moving on a little bit further by saying, okay, now you've mastered that, go beyond your comfort zone and mix something really, really dark to boost the shape of something that's sort of got that cup shape, which you really want.
It's so beautiful. I love this one. And then we move on to Sweet Pea. What is different about this lesson and what is added into the equation here?
Well, I think with this one as well, you've got two things. You've got two elements that are kind of almost of they're rather similar and not the same. I mean, I look at these, I think they're sisters, not twins. So you're definitely not painting the same thing again. You've got to think, no, this is something that has its own unique personality. It's got its own unique lighting and vein structure. So you're not, you're not trying to make it look the same. And I think a lot of artists, even if they have got some experience with botanical painting, they suddenly get something and it looks too similar, too samey on the page. And again, there's lots of perspective in this one because you've got a sort of almost like a halo around the edge, which is very soft, very light, and then you've got something which is much more solid and structured in the center. and then you've got almost a whisper of a stem. Getting that stem very, very fine is enough of a challenge for somebody who has got a bit of experience who wants to move it forward. And as I said right at the start, if a beginner wants to give it a go, absolutely, nothing is off limits. Just do the one on the right that's got the perspective where you can see all of the flower rather than the one on the left, because obviously you'd have to make that little bit up. Don't give yourself more of a headache. Have a go at the one on the right and just put the stem in, because even that will be so beautiful to move your challenge on, to move your practice on. And of course, what you've got to do as well is keep that softness while also getting in quite a lot of detail. So there's plenty of challenge in this one.
Thank you so much for that. And then we move on to something that can look like a small little flower, but it's actually pretty big. So you move up in size, and it's pink, it's yellow. What is added to the learning experience in Summer Cosmos?
I think it's as you say, Hannah. I mean, this one is bigger, and I think a lot of again, beginners, they're nervous about painting big. They love the big botanical paintings that they see, but it's how do you create? Well, what you do is you just make it a little bit bigger, and then you make it a little bit bigger again. So you sort of build up. So rather than going for something enormous straight away, just make something 1.5 times the actual size or twice the actual size. So with the Cosmos, this one, again, I mean, I loved painting this one. Again, it was from the garden. But with this one, I wanted to increase the use of cast shadows. That was kind of introduced with the sweet pea. But with this one, I wanted real dynamism. So you've got lots of cast shadows that are forming really deep colors. And then you've got them right next to bright highlights. There's a lot of shape, a lot of form in this one. And again, you're dealing with something that's a lot bigger, but it's a real introduction to painting bigger. And of course, she's straight on. She's giving you her best look. So it's all in there. The creases, the texture. It's how do you stop the pinks mixing in with the yellows? There's enough challenge, but also she's really satisfying to do because you get to play with pink for ages.
Thank you so much, and also thank you for the way you explain it. We can really feel that you have a relationship with all of these ladies.
Oh, I do. They're my girls, and I love them. Every single one. I mean, when we were putting the course together, I mean that I've got over 100 tutorials. Picking them, I just had to go for what my heart said, and my heart had to have this one. It really, really did, because I mean, she's just a joy, and you can't help but be happy when you paint this one, because when you get her finished, it's so satisfying. You'll love her.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing your passion and insights with us. And this course is filmed in real time. You will see mistakes being corrected because that's what real painting looks like. You will understand the why and the reason behind the brushstrokes, the mixes, the timing, so you get to learn how to make decisions and not just follow along. And if you're new to botanical botanical paintings, picking flowers from botanical gardens and painting them in watercolor, if this is new to you, uh, this is this is your chance to join within the Artefacto catalog, because this is the first ever botanical painting course that Artefacto has created together with an artist. So super happy about that. And there are different rules that apply. There are different subjects, different techniques. And here is the structured path to learn that one. And everything is here. You get the photo references, you get tonal guide, color chart, kit, also the drawing, so you can start and focus entirely on the painting. And you, after this one, you will have flowers that look more three-dimensional instead of flat, knowing when to stop and why that matters more than adding more detail. And you'll learn how to correct mistakes as you go confidently, because you'll understand why they happened in the first place. And here are the two pricing plans that we have. Everything that we have just shared is included in the standard plan. There's lifetime access to all of these videos. There's actually 8 hours of learning, so this is a big, wonderful course. And if you also want a written feedback on your artworks from our wonderful curator, then the premium plan is the perfect fit for you. We only have 30 spots on this one. And individual feedback is something that we have discovered helps people find motivation, makes sure that they keep up with the work, because it's a 75-day after you join that you get this. So this makes sure that you do this, and you will also get that individual feedback so that you can work on what's next for you and jump to the next level with even more ease. And there are only 30 spots there, so that's a unique opportunity to learn from a master and receive individual feedback from the curator, who is also a professional artist. And right now we have an exclusive launch offer on this course. So here are the launching prices. The standard plan with the lifetime access is only $89 or euro, and the premium plan is only $99. And this is you receive written feedback on all of your artworks, and you have all of the recordings for life. And if you join us while we're still here having this conversation, you have a warm welcome gift of an additional 10% discount. So the prices are a bit ridiculous right now. So if you feel the slightest intrigue to learn this, warmest welcome to join us while we're still having the conversation, because these prices are nothing for the experience and the insights that you will gain in this course. So, warmest welcome to join. And if you want to check it out, you scroll down and there you will find a button where it says join the course, and there you can choose the pricing plan of your choice. And when you have clicked and chosen the pricing plan, that's when this additional live stream bonus additional 10% discount will be applied. So you will see that once you have chosen your plan. And now, with that being said, you know how you can continue working with Jarnie and learn much, much more about botanical painting. And before that, it's time for the second practice part. And we're super excited to see what's going to happen. So before, when you start painting, it would be wonderful to hear in your own words what's different with this part in comparison to the first one.
Absolutely. I mean, oh, let me just see if I can there we go. Find the red screen. There we go. And we're back with our little iris. So everything has sort of dried here, but when you get to this point, you think, oh, that looks quite nice. I quite like that. It looks like an iris. It's got the colors of an iris. It must be an iris. But there's always plenty more you can do. And at this stage, what we're doing is we're making things darker again. It's all about boosting that shape. I've done nothing to the colors since we stopped to chat with Hannah. So everything again is just being boosted and made darker. So the same colors again are going on the palette and being mixed again. So it's a bit of magenta and a bit of the violet, just making it a bit darker, a bit more concentrated. So I'm using the smaller brush again. And I just want to make sure that everything stays nice and crisp, nice and sharp, nice and tight. But you don't paint tightly. You don't want to be gripping your brush. As soon as you start gripping your brush, you lose all movement. You still want to have plenty of movement. You want a lovely sort of loose arm, if you like. See, when you're doing big loose washes, you may have noticed when I was doing the big wash, I was holding the brush further up the handle so that this can move. Now I'm doing more detail. I sort of wiggle along and start to go a little tighter. Although I'm not gripping it, I'm holding the brush really lightly. But I just want to make sure that the detail I put on stays in place and goes exactly. It's almost like drawing with a brush, as somebody said right earlier about sort of drawing with the brush, keeping that detail right where you want it. So still maintaining some of the previous washes on show. I don't want to cover it. I want to keep that because it all adds to the tonal value. But see, we want that petal to sort of curve that way. We want it to sort of tuck round on itself. So we do have to make sure that that shape is maintained. And this little area here is tightly sort of curled in on itself. So we want to definitely make sure that we've got that going in a little bit further. And again, you can sort of soften it off. A clean damp brush works really well. It works really hard in botanical painting. But you do need to make sure that your brush isn't soaking wet. You have to make sure that when you clean your brush off, that you've got a little piece of tissue handy, and I always keep some on my palette just to mop off the excess. Because if you're adding too much water to the surface, you start to sort of lift everything that's gone before, and it starts to sort of become overworked and unpleasant, and you start to panic because that's when everything starts to sort of go wrong. And the best thing to do then is just to stop, let it happen, and then rescue it later. So I'm just getting this crease in. So again, just putting in a little bit of the grey and then just sort of dragging it out. Again, just sort of going up against the line and just pulling it out, just to soften it off. And again, as I get to the other side, I'm just sort of rocking it backwards and forwards. And you start to sort of get a little crease. So on the other side of the crease, over here, I just want to darken that a little bit, but not too much, because then that sort of creates that fold. It's a really tight little crease. And just by putting in a darker shadow on one side, and then a slightly lighter one, slightly yellower as well, because that matches with the colour that I can see. Just a little bit, there you go. And it starts to bring that together. And again, once everything's gone darker, round you go again. So at this stage, because where you're bringing the detail in, you're sort of starting to work tighter. Everything sort of starts to sort of shift, and you start to see that it's coming together. Now I want to put some spots on. Those little tiger stripes have kind of gone a little bit quiet. So I want to bring them out again. And what I'm going to add is a little bit of purple to the red. That's the perylene maroon, a little bit of the dioxazine purple. It just makes the red a little bit less red. It sort of takes the edge off it a bit and just gives it a little bit more of a gentle softness, sort of cohesion. That's always important with your colours. You want them to be cohesive. And with the neutrals, I tend to always mix my neutral colours using the blues and the blues and reds and yellows that I have, that I'm using actually in the study, because there's nothing worse than something jarring. So I'm just starting to bring these back again. Change to grey further up. So I'll use a little bit. I can barely see it on the palette actually, but it is there, a little bit of grey. Just make it darker where you need it. And then I need some of these little spots always character on a iris, these little spots. And they follow the lines of the vein lines. Applying random detail can be really tricky. I mean, you get to a point where you sort of move into a kind of a rhythm, and you don't want to do that because unfortunately you start to see lines, and you don't really want them in lines. You want them in slightly off lines. So you are following the veins, but you're trying to keep things fairly natural, fairly random, and also very, very small. I mean, you might get to a point where you're starting to use a sort of one hair. So different sizes, just to keep it looking natural. And also I'm just sort of starting to, again, follow the contour a bit so they're sort of curving in. And they'll go higher towards the center and start to fall away. So these are always really important. I always think that these are kind of like putting, you're sort of getting ready to go out or something, and you're just putting your final touches. You want to sort of make sure these are in because they're so characteristic of the plant. But if they're not there, it's like, oh, that's not quite, it's not quite right because it hasn't got its character on. Now the thing about this is that they just look like spots. They look a little bit harsh. So what I tend to do is get some water onto a brush. Now they're dryish because they're pretty concentrated paint. And I just dot some clean water over them just to help them just to settle a little bit so that they're not too fierce, if you like. They don't look like spots. So things tend to get really small as you start to sort of get into this. And once you sort of start to enjoy doing it, you start to see more. And you think, oh, I'm just going to pop that in, or I'm just going to pop that in. You start to have a conversation with your subject. You really start to see what you're trying to capture. Even this little edge that's just seen. You start to see things. It really does make you enjoy observation. Observation is absolutely key to botanicals, but it's not just that. There are ways of seeing, and you sort of get your eye in to actually what it is you're looking at. You think, okay, it's an iris, but you can start to see the folds, the shadows, where the color starts to break, where it starts to change, where the tones are, all of these things. Maybe there's a bit of light on it, maybe there's a sort of even a nibble hole, there's been an insect enjoying a meal. You start to see all these things and you start to pick it up, and you want to include it because you want to try and include as much as you can, as you can get, as you can see. So you really want to sort of get involved, and the more you do, the more you see, the more you keep on going. And then you start to get into the realm of, oh, hang on a minute, when do I stop? So getting to this point here where this one's actually looking fairly nice. It's got that nice shape, it's got nice depth of tone, it's got a nice feel to it, if you like. So with this one, because all the others haven't been done yet, I would probably get to a point here and I would say, actually, I'm going to leave this one now because I can see that by working this one, that one now needs to be darker. And that one has got a bit more of the dioxazine in it. Now, if I was to do that and think, oh, I need to correct that, go straight in, I have to bear in mind this is still wet. So you have to sort of give it a moment and then start working it. And then I've got all of these to do. And actually what I can see is this little petal under here is quite similar in colour. So I'm just going to take off a bit of that and I'm going to add just a touch of blue to it. Now that's a bit too much. So I add a bit more of the dioxazine. And again, it's sort of a measured process. You know what you need, but you don't know what the quantities are. So you just keep on trying until you get to that point. Now I'm just going to drop some of this in here. Just to sort of get this little petal in here going. Might need to readjust its shape as I go, but that's fine. Take out a little bit of that because it needs some shape and shadow. Drop a bit in, leave it. So that is now dark against something that's lighter. So this petal here starts to sort of look as if it's folded over that little one in there, which is exactly what you want. So I know I need a really dark colour, but I'm not going to use purple just on its own because that's just too harsh. It needs a little of the violet in it, little touch just to bring that round. Make it slightly redder. That's nice. Just takes the edge off. Now what we have is a shadow in here. So I'm just capturing the edge first. And then drop that in. If you have to use a smaller brush, use a smaller brush. You know, there's no sort of, oh, you must use this. If you need this one, you know, if you need a really teeny tiny one, you need a 0, you use a 0, because keeping those little bits sharp is what keeps the realism. As soon as you lose it, the realism goes. So again, I'm just pulling this out just to soften that edge. Because then this violet comes down this one. Just fade it out. Go back in with the shadow, let it. We've already got the edge. And if you think you've taken it too far, if you think, oh, I don't want that there, then just again, you can use a clean, just damp brush, go in with it, and you can lift the paint out without a problem. As long as it's wet, you can shift it. See? And you can start to move it. So nothing is ever a problem. But the thing you can't do then is obviously put more paint in because you've already lifted it out. You don't want to add any more. So you want to let that dry a little bit. So we know there's other things we can do. There's yellow to be put in. It's exactly the same colour as what we've been using. It's just got the edge knocked off it a little bit.
We got a question about the size of the paper, and I'm curious, what is the size of the paper that you're using now, and what is the size of the paper for the course lessons, if there is any difference?
They're usually about the same. I mean, they can vary depending on what the subject is, but they're usually about sort of, they're no bigger than about 30 by sort of 25 centimeters, something like that. Not very big at all. Um, it's really so that things can come together. Too big, and again, it's very, very daunting. And too small, you're not seeing where everything is going. So I always think that this size, this sort of like this little format is actually quite a nice size for everybody really to try at, because I mean this one is nearer to life size than the Cosmos, but it's still a nice enough size that you get a little, you could get a little frame, or you could give it away as a gift, and it means that it has a life after you've finished it. It doesn't just sort of go in the drawer and sort of sit there. It can have a life afterwards, and these are really nice in sort of little frames, because these are such lovely little paintings, and yeah, they're all about the same size. I mean, I've still got them. I mean, that one, that's the iris I worked before. And yeah, it's a bit smaller, but that's because it's been trimmed. But yeah, they're all about the same size and format. Not too big. So I'm just boosting the yellow a little bit here. And again, if that's too much, don't ever use a color just because it's what you've got on the palette. You can just readjust a little bit. Bring it up again. And again, it's sort of similar to what I was doing right at the start with this one, working the yellow and purple and eventually sort of bringing them together. But I'm not going to do that with a brush that's got yellow on it. I'm going to sort of bring them gradually together, clean the brush to sort of keep that junction, that transition nice and clean. Then I can go back with watery purple again. And bring some more in. So again, it's exactly the same process as I used for the start of this one. Everything a bit watery, slightly more loose, just to sort of capture the initial sort of tonal shifts and where everything maps in and goes.
Speaking of that, this is the same process as you used for the first petal or the first part of the petal. We had a question from Lori who's asking, does Jarnie paint each petal completely before progressing to the next petal? And that is the final question. And I also wanted to share that we will soon wrap up. So Jarnie, if you have
Yeah,
anything
absolutely.
specific, then please make sure to do that
Yeah.
now. So
I'm
those are
probably
the
going
two
to
aspects.
wrap up after this little bit, actually, Hannah, because it's just to really demonstrate sort of what you're trying to capture, and that rather than a petal on its own, you can start to see actually where the shape's coming in. And sorry, what was the question?
Do you paint every single petal
Oh,
one
that's
at a
right. Yeah.
time?
Um, I do now, yes. With the Cosmos, I paint all of the petals in sequence, but they're all done to the same level of finish. and then around we go again. So a little bit like a clock. So all of the first washes go on all the petals, and then away we go again. And I did that one differently because it just felt right to do it that way. Some I do where I start at the top left and work to the bottom right. That's because I'm right-handed. So by working on here first and then moving this way, I'm not sort of putting my hand over something. So if I finish that one to completion and then this one to completion and then that bit over there and then working across, I'd finish over here. And of course, my hand isn't on anything that's finished. And of course, it would be reversed for somebody who was left-handed, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Would you say that you are finished with the second practice part?
I think so. I mean, I think hopefully that's given everybody a kind of an idea. I mean, they can see here that to keep the shape, we've kept the edges dark so that they're folding, and dark on this side so it's folding. We've got a bit of a highlight here because dark against light gives the biggest contrasts and gives a really beautiful finish. Same here, this really dark shadow against this highlight, it gives those layered texture so everything looks like it's three-dimensional. That petal and that little sequence that we've just worked on this afternoon, it really starts to look like an actual flower. It's really coming together. I mean, what I might do is actually, if Hannah likes the idea, is I'll get this one to finish and then I'll share it with the Instagram team so that you can actually see what this one looks like when it's done, so that you get a real idea of what it would look like if I'd carried on and we had the time. But
That's a wonderful idea. Thank you so much for that, Jarnie.
okay, so I'll stop sharing there because I know probably Hannah's got some more bits
Yes.
to do. And yeah, I hope you really
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And we have lots of people who have joined and shared in the chat that they have joined. And Laura writes, "Thank you. I can't wait to start the course." So super happy about that. And speaking of sharing artworks on Instagram or sharing paintings of this on Instagram, if any of you have painted or will paint along, please feel free to share that with us on Instagram using tag at artefacto_school and hashtag paint_with_artefacto, so that we get to celebrate your painting with you. And Jarnie has shared that she will share her finished version, so that's super inspiring. And now we have a question for those of you who are here today. What was a moment or an insight where you felt, oh, that's why it works, or that's how she makes this happen, or aha, now I grasp this? Please share if there's something that you gained from this that you don't want to forget. We would love to know. Roxanne writes, "Thank you so much for demonstrating your process." Thank you very much, says Anne. I will surely want to paint this size, Irene. Thank you, very instructive and disciplined painting from Roxanne. And lots of comments. I learned so much. Oh my God, thank you from Andrea. Thank you so much, Jarnie, for such a lovely demo. From Carol, thank you very much. From Barbara, Teresa writes, "You have nice voice and clearly teaching. I can't discipline me yet for such precise work, but I enjoy to look and listen."
Oh, thank you,
Wonderful,
everybody.
thanks. And Sky, welcome, enrolled. Wonderful. I can stay till she finishes. I have plenty of time, was the comment.
Unless Hannah would have stopped me, I would have carried on all night.
Yes. That's what I started to realize, that this doesn't have an end, at least not for
I
these.
told you it would happen, Hannah. I told you it would happen.
Yes. That's why I knew you will be okay if I tune in and make us move to the next part. And what we have painted today is the foundation, and in the full course, Jarnie takes us through 4 complete botanical paintings, from single iris bud to 2-flower composition, and explaining not just how but why every step works, and also how to paint botanical. If we're new to this genre, this style, there are different rules, there's a different paper. Most of the teachers at Artefacto use cold pressed or rough paper, and Jarnie says it's super important to use hot pressed. So it's gonna be a different experience. So if you're excited for something else, something new, something fresh, something beautiful, then you can find that here in this world of watercolor flowers. So welcome to the brand new course, the Botanical Summer Painting Realistic Flowers in Watercolor with Jarnie Godwin. And here's an overview once again of the course content. We have an introduction, then we paint the Iris Germanica bud, and then the Arabella clematis, and the sweet peas, and the summer cosmos, learning different aspects of botanical painting in each and every one of these lessons. So here are the paintings, so you can watch them more closely. Here are the first two, and here are the second two. Pink festivities.
Always
Pink
lots of
party.
pink and lots of purple with me, I know, but it's joyous color.
Absolutely, so beautiful. And our mission here is to take advantage, that you get to take advantage of these 10 years of teaching herself that Jarnie has, and to see what most people overlook, and to get that eye for the detail, and learning how to use watercolor, the imperfect petal, the insect nibbled edge, the flower that's almost past its peak, and making sure that it becomes this feeling of vibrant, alive flower. And her approach is simple: understand why watercolor behaves the way it does, so you never have to copy someone else again. And here you will get to see how to paint three-dimensional botanicals, and also know when to stop and feel confident in making mistakes and recover from that and move through that until you reach that beautiful botanical flower that you were aiming for. It's a foundation if you're a beginner, and it's validation if you're an intermediate, and it's a completely new genre if you're new to landscape painting, for instance. So this is something for everyone who is intrigued to explore this further. And let's take a look at how the learning process looks on the platform, the logistics. So all of these recorded are pre-recorded in high quality. So if you felt that it was hard to see the details in this live stream, that will not be the case in the course itself, because of course a live stream is always of lesser quality than pre-recorded materials, and you can also go back and watch it exactly when you want, when you have that time, and from whatever place you happen to be in, as long as you have internet connection and some kind of device. And you can also pause and do this at your own pace, so that you can take it in on a time, on a day, and in a pace that works for you. We're also excited to share a new addition to this course. So this is something that many people have asked. We now have subtitles available in 6 languages, so that more people can follow along and get those details in the brush strokes, but also in the words. So here's Jarnie's approach: one subject, total focus, and you have seen that. It's one aspect at a time. Every decision is explained, and there's a real progress. Nothing is hidden. You see all of the parts of making this flower become a watercolor painting on the paper. And there's always a community for those who join the Artefacto courses. So if you're new to Artefacto, you will be invited to a community on WhatsApp, which is moderated by a dedicated professional community manager in our support team, where people make friends and share advice and just share this wonderful journey of creating in watercolor. And if you join the premium plan, you will also receive written feedback on your artworks, on the finished paintings, plus a creative task. And this is also something that will support you even more. The curator has formal education and years of experience in art, and is professionally trained to provide feedback, and is super supportive and will help you to reach that next level with even more ease. And you will receive a certificate of completion. Let's take a look here. If you join the premium plan, that's when you get the certificate of completion, so you can share with the world that you have studied with Jarnie. And here are the prices that are only available right now. while we're still having this conversation. So if you scroll down to the join the course button and then click on either the premium plan or the standard plan, that's when this price will be activated. We also have a bonus, so if you join any of the plans, you will get Articoins, which is an internal currency that Artefacto has that you can use to purchase products from the special store, Artist Store. And the more Articoins you have, the more products you can choose from. And there's a limited number of spots on the premium plan because we want the curator to have all the focus to provide high quality feedback here. So this is for you if you want to learn at your own pace, have lifetime access, and also learn from a master, a gold medalist of botanical paintings. And let's take a quick look at how the logistics works when it comes to actually paying for this and getting access to the materials. When you click the join the course, you will come here. You can click or scroll down to the pricing plans, and then you click the proceed to payment. And here I have written down, my name is correct, the other things are not, but you will fill in your email, your name, and your phone number, and then you click the proceed to payment button. And once you get there to this one, you can choose to pay either via PayPal or bank card, whatever you choose. This is a secure payment, so you choose that one, continue, and then you simply fill in your details. And after you have done that, you can see here that this is the price that I get. Then you will receive an email with access to the course, so you can get started straight away, and you will have access to the materials for life. So that is the logistics. And we also have a guarantee. So if you're a bit unsure if this format works for you, you can give it a go. We have a 14-day guarantee. So if after a couple of lessons you realize that this is not going to give you the results that you want, you can write us an email and you will actually get your money back. So because of course we want this to be a perfect fit for you, and we want this to inspire you to move further on your watercolor and flower painting journey. So if you have any more takeaways, please share them in the chat. And also if you have any questions, please share them in the chat, because we have a Q&A coming up. Most botanical courses teaches you how to paint. Jarnie also teaches you why. And this is a journey where you start painting with her, but it's a process where you gain the insights and the know-how, so that after this course you can pick up any flower and paint it on your own and have that skill set. And now it's time for questions, and I will start with some questions that I have saved throughout this workshop and take a look at them. We do have lots of questions about the background. You choose to have a white background. So why is that? Do you always have that? Do you have any examples of something else? We also have a question, is that the only correct way of painting botanical? Please share with us who are new to this style.
Yeah, I mean, botanical painting is quite unusual in the fact that it's not still life. There are no shadows behind the subjects which sort of ground it to the background. Botanical painting traditionally is painted with no background at all. Although many more contemporary artists today, they do bend those rules a little bit. So they do put sort of a shadow, which shows that the subject is sort of grounded to the paper, or they'll even do them on black backgrounds, which many Dutch artists during the 18th and 19th century were doing. So because it has a very deep heritage of those early explorers going to new and exotic places and taking an artist with them, they didn't want any background to sort of interfere with the identification of the plant. So botanical painting is often seen where science and art meet. And I still like to sort of keep with that tradition. So I personally don't put shadows on the background, but I know that there are some artists that do, because putting a shadow on it makes it a still life. Like if you're painting a bowl of fruit or something and you put shadow to ground it to the paper. But it's just the traditional way that botanical painting is done. And I mean, it's my personal preference. I just still like to sort of follow that tradition, even if what I do paint is a little bit more sort of contemporary in the fact that I go bigger, I go bolder, and that sort of thing. It's just a nice thing to do.
Thank you so much for sharing more of the background and more of the context from which you gain inspiration and which this course is also a part of. So, thank you for that. We had a question that just popped in from Deb a couple of minutes ago. Do you have any suggestions for painting in a very dry climate?
Dry climates too tend to be quite tricky, although I have had students from Australia, where it can be again very dry. I think initially the wet into wet does work. What you can do is put a clean water glaze, sort of so use a brush, load it well, and put some clean water onto your paper where you want the paint to go, and then you let it settle to what we call a satin sheen. So you sort of can tilt your head over a little bit to see the surface. And when it's an even sort of level of wetness, so it's not soaking wet, it's not puddles everywhere, but when it's like a soft sort of satin-like sheen, so it's just wet, that's the moment that you can actually put your paint in. And that will give you your wet into wet wash where you can start to work it. The reason why I like to initially start wet into wet is because you get that sort of soft, spontaneous settling of the paint. If you put it wet on dry, yes, you can work as I did with the demonstration we've just done this afternoon. You can start with a very loose, wet layer of paint, just as long as you use a clean, damp brush just to sort of blend it into the drier areas. And you would have to leave it alone a lot sooner. Your paint won't be so flexible to work with. So you'll probably end up working a few more layers.
Thank you so much for those tips and also understanding more of how the watercolor aspects will need to be considered when painting. We have another question regarding background. Suzanne writes, if you have a white background but also have either white flowers or white flower parts, what do you do to make the white on the flower parts stand out? Such a great question. What are your thoughts on?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I have painted quite a few white on white, so snowdrops and things like that. And really, when you're painting white flowers, everything is coming from the shadows that you can see. So if you put a white flower against white paper and take a photograph and look really carefully, you'll often see colour. It's not as white as the paper. I mean, a snowdrop will often be quite cream in colour. There's a lot of yellow and a lot of green in it. And also, if they look pure white, you'll see like a blue toned shadow. And really, what you're doing is you're painting the shadows to give the white flower its form. So you do leave lots of white of the paper, but you often find that what you're doing is you're working the darker shadows to give it the form, and it still registers as white. So maybe that would be for a future tutorial as a snowdrop. But yes, I do understand where you're coming from, keeping that whiteness. Often as well, if you put like a green leaf behind it, it accentuates its pale color. But yeah, you're basically painting the shadows.
Thank you so much for that. And we have several more questions. And Shanta, I hope you also got a bit of an answer there. We have had several questions regarding exactly what that eraser, illuminator, or wedge brush, exactly what that brand was. And also, do you share specifically what brushes you use in the course?
I do, but I'm always very aware that not everybody wants a sable brush. So I generally give the size. I mean, yes, mine are Winsor& and Newton Series 7 miniatures. They also do rounds. The little wedge brush it is a Winsor& and Newton. It's a Sable Series 56. It's a short, flat brush. Short flat ones are they're quite stiff, and that's what you want when you want an eraser brush, because when you're using it just damp and you're scrubbing away to lift paint, you'd want it to not be too flexible. You want it to be quite stiff. So yes, I am open to always sharing what I do use, but I'm also very aware that some people might have their own that they want to use. But small brushes, ones and twos are quite good for what I do. I always give a full kit list, so it's up to
Yeah.
the student on their preference.
Thank you so much for that. And I just remembered an early question, which was, do you ever use masking fluids and how do you make sure to preserve the white?
I don't. I have my own opinion on masking fluid. I don't particularly get on with it. I either leave it on for too long because I forget I've used it. I tend to be very simple in my wants when it comes to painting. I find masking fluid way too complicated and you can never get it as fine as you want. I tend to do what we call negative painting. So all of the white is basically left behind. Even fine hairs, I paint in between. Now that sounds like a lot of hard work when you could just use masking fluid. So feel free if you get on with it, absolutely you use it. Again, it's all down to personal preference. I just don't get on with it. So I just don't use it.
Yeah, I can see that your technique is so much more controlled and more fine. Like masking fluids is perfect for people who want to be able to, just use big brushes and lots of water, but you already have that detail and that control. Masking fluid would make it so much less detailed in
Yeah,
your use.
you try to get it on really finely, and then you get a blob, and before you know
Yeah.
it, it's all
Yeah.
gone horrible. I just got into the practice early on of just painting in between,
Yeah.
and it works for me.
And
But
it's so
again,
beautiful. Let
it's
me
it's
just
down to
share
personal.
what I have on my screen. I have this in the background, and we can see all of these fine details. Masking fluid just couldn't do this. It just doesn't have that in itself. It just this is some high skilled fine
Well,
painting.
she was quite a big one. She was quite a big painting.
Ah,
Um, but you can see with the very, very pale, I mean, actually going back to the question about painting white, you can see that the petal to the sort of top right is really, really pale. But it does, yeah, that one. It almost registers as white. So what I've had to do with this very pale rose is go in for the shadow tones that I can see. So there's lots of cast shadows, lots of deep shadow on there. So when it comes to very pale things, that's what you're looking for. You're actually looking for the shadows. So that's actually a really good example of that one, Hannah. Well done.
yeah, perfect. It answered two. It shared it for two. It shared a supportive image to two of the questions. That was perfect. And I just realized that we have been here well over 2 hours now. So I'm gonna ask you one final question, and I also want to remind anyone who is still here in the live version of this that if you want that additional discount, this is the final question. So just so you know that. And the final question is, do you paint from photograph or from live plants, or do you paint from both? What are your thoughts on those different ways of painting botanical paintings?
For the tutorials, because students want a reference, I usually take a photograph of the subject that I'm painting, although the subject itself will have been alive at the time that I painted it. I choose to paint from life. Photographs are brilliant for references, so flowers by their nature don't last very long. So if you do use photographs, you tend to look at it with a more scientific eye. So you take lots of close-ups of lots of the sort of the anatomy of it. So you want the stem, you want the buds, you want the sepals, you want the stamens, you want all the little details in lots and lots and lots of photographs. So you might end up taking over 50 photographs maybe for one piece because you want to make sure that you haven't missed anything out, because once that flower dies, it's too late, you can't get it back. So reference photographs for the participants on the course, absolutely, but they will have been taken, but those photographs will have been taken from the live subject that I used in order to create it.
super inspiring, and we have lots and lots of thank yous. And oh my God, that's gorgeous. Writes Luna. Wanda says thank you for being very informative. Carrie writes thank you so much, Jarnie and Hannah. And now it's time to wrap up, and I would just ask you, Jarnie, what are your final thoughts, your final words of encouragement for someone who is curious but still not quite sure if they're ready or if this is a good fit for them from wherever they happen to be with whatever experience that they have in that they come
Absolutely,
with.
Hannah. I think curiosity is absolutely the starting point. I mean, I knew nothing about botanical painting when I started it. I couldn't name a botanical artist. I knew nothing about it. But it's just that spark, it's that interest, it's that sort of that little bit of inspiration. And even if we've just got flower boxes, on a balcony or a favorite park we go to, there will be flowers that inspire us. There will be flowers that we love. We love having flowers in our home. To be able to paint them is just an absolute joy. And I pinch myself that this is what I get to do every day. And my biggest joy is introducing other people to it. Um, I'd say to anybody, if you're not sure, just try it. What are you going to lose? You're not going to lose anything in giving it a go. If you're a watercolorist anyway, it's just a slightly different way of working, and it's just so inspiring to be able to do it. And the curiosity is the starting point. If you're thinking about it, do it, because if not now, when? And that is what I have told myself every single day that I do it. If I just didn't take that jump, I would not be where I am today, with paintings in collections, with beautiful people who I get to talk to every day on Instagram, being able to do things like this. Um, you know, if if not now, when? And I'm not just saying that because I put a course together. I would have told you that anyway if you'd have asked the question.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing so much. There are so many thank yous in the chat. Luna, it's Johnny and Hannah, the dream team. And thank you so much, Luna, and everyone who's just shared so many sweet comments in the chat and so much enthusiasm. And thanks to everyone who's shared that they have joined, and warmest welcome to the course to everyone who has joined. And I hope that everyone takes this inspiration and uses that in a way that works for you in your life, and just watch the beautiful world around us with an artist's eyes, because the world just becomes more beautiful when we do. And thank you so much for sharing both your insights and the techniques and all of the knowledge, but also your passion, Jarnie, and your enthusiasm and the energy that you have shared with us today.
Oh, you're
Warmest
all so
thank yous.
welcome. I mean, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for hosting
Mm.
me. I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure to
Oh,
bring these tutorials back, because they were such a joy to put together, and I loved it. And coming here and doing this. And thank you all so much for staying. And yes, we've gone on a bit. And yes, but that's kind of anybody who knows me. If there are old friends here who have decided to come along, then they'll know exactly what I'm like, and they'll say, "Oh, this is pure Jarnie. This is what she
oh.
does." And I hope that it sort of breaks that barrier, it breaks that boundary that you think that botanical painting is something to be afraid of, that it's precise, that there are strict rules, that everything has to be done a certain way. No, it doesn't. If you feel comfortable, I feel comfortable, and you will enjoy it, because it's such a pleasure, and I can't wait to share it.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone who joined. Have a wonderful rest of your morning, noon, afternoon, night, whatever it happens to be, where you are right now. And wishing you wonderful watercolor painting sessions with the futures from your neighborhood, perhaps.
Yeah, and keep an eye on the Artefacto Instagram page, because
Yes.
once I get to finish this, hopefully within the next week, this little iris will hopefully get shared on there, and you can see what it looks like. So yeah,
Wonderful. Thank
looking
you
forward to
so much.
sharing it.
Bye bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.